So brick has a score of like 8 to 10 in terms of its embodied energy. That's everything from harvesting cradle to grave, all the way to the brick being placed in the wall. Gold's score is 300,000.
Hello and welcome. Today I have a very special guest for you. I am honored to have John Little here with me. John's articles have a big impact in the silver community because they are really good. His website is thepickaxe.xyz. He also writes amazing articles on the silverindustry.substack and mineralwealth.substack, thepickaxe.substack, and that is also his Twitter handle, thepickaxeofficial on Substack. You guys, there is a treasure trove of information about the silver industry in his articles, and a lot of it is unique. So I do recommend you check out his work. And of course, nothing in this video is financial advice. John, I appreciate you being here and welcome you to the show.
Hey, Brian. Hey, I'm a fan of the show. And I see you in Reddit often. So that makes us apes, and apes together strong. So cool. I'm glad to be here, Brian. And viewers, just so you know, Brian and I have many common interests besides silver. We both spent, I always said I did time in Albuquerque. No, yeah, I grew up there well, during the college years, and spent a lot of time in Denver, and you're in Springs, right?
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah, okay. So Colorado. So a big shout out to the Southwest. Anyway, good to
Heck,
see you, Brian. Good to talk to you. What's going on with silver? Let's do it. Let's light this thing up.
okay, you bet. Well, yeah, we both spent time in Albuquerque, and yeah, it's great that we have that in common. It's an honor to have you here. I wanted to start out by asking you about the space race article on mineral wealth that came out last week. So you guys get this. SpaceX plans to put 42,000 satellites into space, and these satellites only have a 5-year life expectancy. So a lot of the silver used in these satellites will be lost. Do you know what the average amount of silver or gold in one of these satellites is? And would you mind taking a guess as to how much we might have already lost up there?
Well, yeah, that's what I do sometimes is check sources with about 5 different methods. Like you can't trust Google or AI. And you can't get on the phone or get on LinkedIn and ask Lockheed Martin or SpaceX or Virgin Galactic or the Russians or the Chinese, hey, what's going on with these satellites? But the game plan is get the satellites up in space so you can control, there's lots of wars out there. We have information wars. We have a monetary war going on right now with China. There's the kinetic war, which is just your conventional, soldier against soldier, jet against jet, tank against tank. But the next war that's probably the most powerful will be these cyber wars, which includes taking down your enemies, power grids, hospitals, banks, things of that nature. So satellites will be a key to that. And with Musk always trying to be with his bank account, he's front loading this space race. But that's on as a corporate side. That doesn't take what we see with governments. So your question was, do we have an idea of how many satellites are out there? No, is the answer, but there's a lot. I would say the best source for that could be Google, and I think that you get a quick answer on that. But we do know that Musk did, before you launch a satellite, you have to file with the FCC because it's almost like starting a radio station, and you have
Okay.
to get a license. So he's licensed for 40,000 more. That's a huge number. That doesn't
Wow.
count, his competition would be, it's always the billionaire, that wants to, it's a vanity project. And if anyone's watched Succession on HBO, you'll see that usually it starts with an energy company. In the old days, it would be like Westinghouse, that was power or electric. but they always get involved in media, so they can control the narrative, just like we see Musk starting out in, let's say, Tesla, then moving over to a solar company he has, and then he also has this SpaceX, and now he's dabbling in media. So they want to control the narrative as well as being a captain of industry. So let's just take his number of 40,000 and act like there's never been, and we know there's just US alone. I would just take his number and go times 5, and that's a good idea of what's going on throughout the beginning of the satellite era. Okay, so let's go with just 200,000 satellites. I would think that's a conservative number.
Sure.
You know, for Musk, we're giving him at that point 20% market share, right? So that's pretty conservative. And satellites can have as much as 10 kilos, depending on, some of these satellites are
Are
gigantic.
big. Oh
But
yeah.
let's just go with a small number and say they have 3 kilos.
Okay.
So that's 3,000 kilograms. And then take that number of 200,000 satellites. So that's
600,000.
600,000 kilos. Never to be seen again, never counted by the Silver Institute. Um, and we did the same thing with missiles. Just last week, I think the best source I found was starting at Wikipedia, just for different, for people not familiar with this word SKU, SKU, it would just be this particular mug has its own SKU. It's based on the thickness of it. You can see it's a little thicker,
Hmm.
the height, the width, the depth, or we used to say, this is not sexist, but we'd always say women have legs, width, height, length. That's when you look in the construction industry. So same with a missile. Is based on the manufactured specs, the length of the missile, the size of the engine, and all of the navigation devices inside it. But what most people don't think about are the batteries in these things, because they're going through highly, let's just say, severe weather, right? Outer
Sure.
space.
Oh yeah.
So, how do you get more severe weather than outer space? Right?
Yeah, that's as rough as it gets,
Right. So you can't recharge, right? When the rockets and missiles are flying around orbit, you better have a reliable charge. So there's a company called, and anyone should do this research. They're called Eagle Pitcher. So eagle, like, the American eagle, and it's not like a baseball pitcher or a pitcher of water, Picher. So it's
Okay.
like pincher without the N, and they make silver zinc batteries. Silver zinc batteries are superior to lithium ion batteries, because lithium ion batteries, they don't hold the charge as well. They also have issues in severe weather, like during the hurricanes. Do you remember seeing all those Teslas exploding when there was moisture combined?
Yeah.
Right. So silver zinc happens to be the most superior type of battery out there, especially, and that's all this company makes for aerospace and military uses. So again, this is off the radar, never counted by COMEX, never been counted by the Silver Institute. And we can get into why this happens and why this new sort of I wouldn't say, I would just say we've gone down this rabbit hole of bombs, shells, missiles, torpedoes, nukes, fighter jets, tanks. And that's just, the military. And then with aerospace, we're getting into satellites and space stations and, spacecraft. And then last week we talked about the new hypersonic missile, which is just insane. It goes like from, I forgot how many times the speed of light, but it's in our latest article.
Oh, that sounds really interesting. And yeah, as someone who watches the industry, I really appreciate your articles. It's nice to see someone digging for that information that's hard to find. And like you were saying, how much is China using for their military? These are really hard things to figure out. And so just any numbers to sink my teeth into, and I'm sure a lot of people in the silver industry, feel the same way. Just anything to consider. It's really thought provoking, and the point about the Silver Institute's numbers being incorrect because of all these factors, is something that we all need to take into consideration when we're considering the silver shortage. How much of this stuff is really out there, because most of this that he's talking about, guys, is not being recorded in any way, shape, or form. It's just like a black hole of information, and so it's hard to determine. So we really appreciate that.
Well, you got it was sort of this sort of story appeared through a collaboration with Illuminated Ape and some people in Reddit, and all of us have our parts. So it's not like I'm doing all the research. It was just too much of a coincidence when we saw with this huge drain that occurred during the Manhattan Project, and you did a great video on that, and I did watch it. So you were thinking along the same lines, and it does connect to drain the mint. We'll talk about that too, but in 1996, the Department of Defense just stopped, cold turkey reporting on their use of silver. And coincidentally, that was the same year they shut down what was called the United States Bureau of Mines, and they were just abolished, which made no sense because there's quite a rich mining culture in the United States, especially Nevada, New Mexico, Arizona, all throughout the Appalachian Mountains, Idaho, a lot of coal. So it made no sense. They just stopped. And then they shuffled. So US Bureau of Mines, DOD stopped the same year. They reassigned the data to the USGS. And then all of a sudden, the USGS just comes up with this sort of bogus list of categories that don't include any of these aerospace or military usages. So how convenient is that? It's like there's no way to price in. How do you price a commodity if you don't know what the supply of the commodity is? And then
Absolutely.
our sort of suspicious minds took it a step further, that the main drainers or users were these huge industrialists. And it's no different than during the Gilded Age when Carnegie and Rockefeller and, were making the things that we need for the Industrial Revolution. They also happen to sit on bank boards. So if you own a factory, let's say I owned Hershey's, for example, just down the road here in Pennsylvania, the last
Yeah.
thing I wouldn't want high sugar prices. So these big industrial users of silver sitting on bank boards don't want high silver prices, and they can ensure they stay low just by shorting silver through these paper transactions. And that would be the motive to keep their factory inputs low. It's just a profit motive. I guess it doesn't make them evil as much as it makes it easy to follow the money.
That
And
makes a lot of sense. Absolutely. Yeah, you're not going to want to pay a high amount, if you're running the chocolate factory. Same thing with these guys.
right.
Um,
Or labor. There's never been a factory owner or business owner that says, hey, goody goody, my insurance bill went up. The
right.
workers want more money. Because it is hard to turn a profit, especially in the United States. I mean, especially for a small business person. They're just lots of people think, oh, he owns a business, he's doing well. I used to wait tables, and if we made 18 to 20% off the top, we were doing better than the owner. I mean, after all the smoke clears, the guys that take 15 or to 20% off the top do better than the person that owns the business sometimes. So there is something, I'm not here to start some class war or something, but it's just, I will when it comes to talking about silver though. But you ask good questions. You're on a roll, Brian. What's up? What's your next question? And if I don't answer it accurately, just stop me and I'll try to get you
Okay. Yeah.
organized or stay on task.
Hey, no sweat. No sweat.
You're a good
Uh,
interviewer.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And man, you have some great information to share with everybody. Um, a lot of people think of gold and silver as being abundant, but it turns out that gold and silver are more scarce than the rare earth metals. Um,
Right.
how much more rare are the precious metals than the rare earth metals, would you say?
Ooh, that I think it's like, well, in the case of gold, let's start there.
Okay.
It can be up to 200 times more rare. The rare metals, so it's one of those things that's confusing. You couldn't, why are they calling them rare metals if they're pretty abundant in the Earth's crust? A lot of it has to do with how expensive they are to process and which ones make it on the list. And again, that's a call to and their industrial application, or when they're refined, how complicated and expensive can that be? So that's sometimes why there's confusion, but gold is 200 times probably more rare. So why isn't it considered? It's probably the ultimate. That and platinum are probably considered the two most scarce. But really what makes gold the best form of money has to do with what they call the stock to flow ratio is, and that means that there's roughly between 6.5 billion and 8 billion ounces of gold above ground in stockpiles. And that stays fairly consistent. Really, the same gold that's been around since, let's even say, I don't know, the French Revolution has
Right.
stayed really consistent. And it's sort of the only time gold really dips or increases, let's just say increases, because that would hurt as a gold holder. You wouldn't want that supply to get too big. So it's only when it's profitable to mine do we see introductions of more stockpiles of gold. Moreover, the gold ore grade is greatly reduced as the villagers have been taking their pickaxe, that's the name of the publication. It used to be higher ore grade closer to the surface. Now we're looking at strip mining, and really it's like gold dust compared to the grade that they had, let's just say, even 100 years ago. So that stock to flow, you can't print gold. So when you think of the characteristics of money, going back to the classics like Mike Maloney's series on the fundamentals of money, or I forgot what he calls that series. It's awesome though. There's like 5 or 6 of them. But really what makes gold the perfect money is it's portable, it's divisible, it's fungible, and it's a store of value. But most importantly, really, is that it because it stays consistent, it isn't prone to inflation. You can't print it like just like you can't print a barrel of oil. But
Right.
go ahead. I do have some good
Yeah.
facts about gold that is fascinating, but we'll wait for that. And
Yeah.
silver, go ahead.
The ore grade has really dropped a lot, and things like the Comstock load, something that really helped our country become wealthy early on, was total low hanging fruit. Like you were saying, guys were just going in there with pickaxes. They were coming out with high grade ore. And yeah, those days are looking like they're gone, folks. So that's just something, people should keep into consideration. But like you said, that's good for us. As investors, we don't want there to be an abundance of gold, available, as far
Right.
as for our bottom line,
Do you
protecting
know
our wealth.
gold has this other characteristic, and it's bizarre. I'll give you 3 more facts on gold.
Okay.
It's the only a lot. Okay, when I used to sell brick, in fact, it was near where you are, just 30 minutes south of you, Pueblo, Colorado, where there were good clay deposits. But we'd have to mine the clay, send it through a sifter. It then goes through an extruder. And then when it comes out in these wet columns that were maybe 15 feet, we'd have to then slice it into these 4x8 units, dry it, and then it would be stacked on a railroad car going through a tunnel kiln that's 50 yards long at 2,000 degrees for 4 days. And all of that gets counted up as what's called your embodied energy. Same thing with this coffee cup. How much went into firing the ceramic? And you give it a score. So brick has a score of like 8 to 10. in terms of its embodied energy. That's everything from harvesting, cradle to grave, all the way to the brick being placed in the wall. Gold's score is 300,000, which
Whoa.
is based on its megajoules per kilogram. It is the highest embodied energy on planet Earth. Not, I mean, way more than platinum. Which means it goes to the hardness again of not when you bite on it, but hard in terms of hard to create. So if I'm in a trade situation, I respect the labor of a farmer who spends maybe a season caring for the crops and fertilizing the soil, planting the corn, bringing it to market. Meanwhile, the same guy could, or another friend of ours could be a butcher or raising beef, and he spends the whole season caring for the cattle and the pigs and the slaughter and all. And then meanwhile, you and I'll pick you, Brian. We're there in Cripple Creek, right in your backyard.
Sure. Yep.
Seriously,
Yeah.
panning for gold. So there's a deal that when we all enter the marketplace, we've respected each other's time, talent, energy, labor. That's why gold, and that silver sitting right there on the screen, everyone, is sort of your life congealed. Your time, your talent, your energy, your sweat, your labor, all congealed in that little battery. And with gold, you can pound on it 1 ounce. They used to smash it forever until it could create like a foil, which they called golden leaf, that was 300 square feet, 1 ounce of gold,
Yeah.
or stretched into a wire 50 miles long. So that goes to how ductile it is, how malleable it is. So it just can be used in so many different cases. And in the satellites, they'll even use gold because it's great thermal shield. So there's just so many uses for gold that's why that's what we mean when we say intrinsic value versus some boomer rock that has no value, right? You've heard
Right,
that.
absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
because people think of it that way. They're like, oh, it's this antiquated thing. It's this useless rock from days of old, but that is not the case, guys. And what John is talking about, it's really impressive. You might have seen like a luxury house, maybe from last century, where there is what looks like gold all across the ceiling, and it's really gold, guys. They pounded that flat, but like he was saying, 1 ounce can go cover 300 square feet of roof space, and they got this nice shiny roof, and that's really gold. It's pretty crazy.
Maybe we should start doing that. The problem is I don't have enough money to buy enough right now. So the last thing I would do is, but actually, it's kind of, if you think about it, 1 ounce of gold to do 300 square feet, I can tell you a lot of high-end slate, granite, and other products that would be, that go for $70 to $100 a square foot. So at 100 times 30, you're right there at 3,000. So gold can be priced in, it shows you how really it's well under market value right now, guys. It's on sale courtesy of our banking friends that short it. They can do almost a whole year of mining activity can be traded on the paper derivative market. And let's remember, it derives value from an underlying asset. So it's a paper substitute of gold. So it can be, again, in 2 days of trading, a whole year's of mining. So we know from that data that gold and silver are very, very underpriced commodities. And maybe copper could be the most underpriced of them all right now. I'm not sure. So it's in between those three: silver, copper, and gold.
Yeah, and that really just does go to show how undervalued this is. I mean, the fact that the pricing could even be comparable to a granite or something like that. If you're going to cover a large area with gold, it doesn't make any sense that it's actually
I
price
know.
competitive right now. And what he's saying, an example on September 29th of this year, I think it was like 500 million silver paper contracts got traded in one day. And, the silver price went down quite a bit while the banksters did their shenanigans, but it's impressive. So you figure you know, in a good year, you know, maybe we're getting a billion, but we're probably getting more like 850 million ounces. So yeah, they traded a little over half of what comes out of the earth in a year in one day.
Okay, what? Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're the first person that's taught me that. What did you? I think you're right on the annual silver production, right? Is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
yeah, that's what I was referring to. Yes.
Yeah, I think you're right on that number. Have you heard it's about a billion?
Yeah, I think a lot of times it's about a billion. I think nowadays it's going to be more like 850 million.
Right. I think you're right. It's not going higher. I promise you that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it's downhill from here, folks. You know, this stuff's getting hard to get after, and you know, something that we'll touch on sometimes is what's going on in Mexico with the regulations and the reduction in mining. They produce about a third of the world's silver, and so yeah, it's kind of drying up. Yeah, I agree. It's not going to be going up from there.
Okay, you're full of good data. That's correct. And think of the Peñasquito mine too that was closed for
Yeah.
the labor disputes. Panama just closed last week for uh, copper. It's called I forgot the name of the project, Quantum Materials, something La Cobre. Where's my Spanish? But you know, the Copper Canyon. Have you gone on that trip yet? By the way, Brian,
I haven't. Uh-uh.
you go. So take a $40 flight, if there's such thing. It probably is still, or 49 from Springs to El Paso, then cross over to Chihuahua, and you go right through the Copper Canyon on a train.
Oh,
It's
that sounds cool.
And then you're right there in where probably tons of the silver projects are there in the northern state of Chihuahua.
Yeah,
I
that
only know
sounds.
that from my days of guarding the silver when I worked for the cartels. You see, no, I'm kidding. It's
Yeah, they
just a
had you on the
joke. You're
train.
not supposed to joke about cartels, but you know, you're from Albuquerque, so we always used to joke about the cartels.
Yeah, you do got to be careful. You know,
Yeah,
I
you
don't
got to
think
be
we're in
careful.
dangerous waters right now. But yeah, I used to go into Juarez quite a bit. I was stationed in El Paso for a while, and sometimes as a teenager, groups of us would drive down from Albuquerque because you can drink in Juarez when you're a teenager.
That's right.
Yeah.
Fred's Rainbow Bar, right? I used to go, yeah.
Yeah, there was one called Drink and Drown.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, they had that written in English on it anyway, and yeah, they had a little strip of bars there, pretty much to cater to young Americans. That
Yeah. So you were at Fort Bliss, it sounds like.
yes, that's correct.
Yeah. But it wasn't Bliss. It's one of those, it's like when they say Operation Blue Sky, then they go bomb a bunch of people. So it's like, I get you. But
Uh, yeah, it's like yeah, it could very much be the opposite when the military's naming these
that's the
folks.
military way. Just like the pricing on with the paper shorts. But you know your stuff. Let's get back to the rarity or scarcity. Um, Problems all over the globe. You know, it's funny too, because people in the United States sometimes view Africa as being risky. And then likewise, people in Europe view Latin America as being risky. But as it turns out, right now, there's more risk in maybe California with jurisdiction. So the point is, if you can grab, you know, a gold coin or silver coin now that's already gone through all that jurisdiction risk and through that lengthy processing to become, you know, to make it from your or go to your LCS or you order from, in my case, Money Metals, you know, it's a good deal at little, you know, $24. Pay
An
the fee.
absolute steal right now, folks. An
It really
absolute
is.
steal.
And we tell people just do an ounce, you know, if you can, an ounce a week. And pretty soon you've got a stack. It's not like you have to go out and go insane, right? I mean,
Yeah, you know, I mean, you don't have to spend like a whole lot of your wealth on this stuff. Especially at the price point it's at. I mean, and when I was talking with Gigi Bullion, he was like, "Man, even if you can just go get a couple dimes, you guys, just anything to keep building your stack and to kind of get going." Because as the years unfold here, I imagine the price is going to go back to something more like what its historic normal was, you know, like
mm,
15 to 1 when compared to gold. And it won't even seem like the same animal. I think the price might go up enough, you know, people will really be kicking themselves looking back that they didn't buy it when it was in the mid 20s.
right. Yeah, we'll see that happen. And it's going to be, you know, I guess the bankers, we do always rag on them, but sometimes you do need banks to do the things we need, like construction projects and to fund schools and stuff like that. But maybe they're doing us a favor, putting it on sale, and just you sleep better at night. I know that sounds hokey, cheesy, corny, but it's true. Don't you think, Brian?
Absolutely. And that's a really good point, you guys. They're basically taking all the risk. Obviously, JP Morgan's been busted a couple times. A couple of Merrill Lynch traders were busted back in 2008. And so what they're doing to the paper contracts to keep the price suppressed is take advantage of that. You're not doing anything illegal, but you can take advantage of
Right.
what they've done.
Right.
Um, speaking of the banking systems, um, the banks are on unstable ground right now.
Mhm.
Banks are holding 2.9 trillion in commercial real estate debt. And you guys, it's not just John talking about this stuff. Even CNN had reported that the value of these properties could fall by 20 to 25%. And for offices, maybe as high as 30%, according to CNN. Could you share with us what the government is doing in response to this and what it might mean for people's bank accounts?
Wow, that's uh here's how I would distill all that is we are let's just say since the great financial collapse of 2008, if we were to put that in perspective, when for those of us, I recommend that movie, The Big Short,
Oh,
where
yeah, that's a good one.
Michael Burry predicted which started shorting the housing market. Okay. And then, of course, TARP came in and injected not even a trillion, maybe 800 billion to bail out the system. This time, there's a lot more leverage in terms of what we call um, banks that have repackaged a lot of their bad loans, passed them off to someone else under a different name. They call that, a derivative as well. And then with the commercial real estate, that was the residential back in 2008. With the commercial real estate issue, we're looking at as much as 20 to 30% vacancies after the COVID war. We saw technologies like Zoom that we're on right now, leading to an environment where none of us have to really go stand near the water cooler to get work done. So
Right.
you're looking at the hollowing out of massive office buildings. We were just in New York City, and every other building had just floors and floors and floors of available rent. So what happens with commercial real estate, it's much worse than residential, because with residential, there's sort of a shortage of inventory, where it's the opposite with commercial. And most of these loans have to be refinanced in the next 18 months under adjustable terms. So not only will
Right.
they don't have the renters, right?
Yep.
And they're going to have to, because of this, we've never seen interest rates go as high as fast as they did since March of 2022. So the banks are too stressed out to take back this inventory onto their balance sheets. So fractional reserve, people don't realize this, but there was already 5 or 6 failures in 2023, not counting, we all heard about Signature Valley Bank, but there were 4 or 5 others. So once one goes, and most people are kind of keeping their eyes on a few European banks or Japanese banks, but it just takes one. And then because there is a zero reserve cash requirement, right? So if you, Brian,
Yeah.
have $10,000 in the bank, they're not required to put any of that. So really, when you make a loan to the bank, excuse me, a deposit to the bank, by definition, it's not a deposit. It's an unsecured loan to the bank. So really, that's why people, I guess it could be illegal to promote a bank run, but it's not illegal to tell people what the risk is, and why it's a better practice to be unbanked. And that's sort of the philosophy of silver and gold, is that it's the anti-dollar. the dollar it's no different than any other fiat product. This is an ancient fiat currency has been around forever. That just means usually a government issues a banknote, and it was always a form of a war bond, really, to raise money for war, which hasn't changed. There's been 57 undeclared wars since World War II. So when you look at the dollar in your wallet, it's really a war bond. Because if the legislator went to the people and said, should we go on this 20-year adventure in Afghanistan and replace the Taliban with the Taliban? Most people,
It's what they did too. It's
right,
so ridiculous.
at a price that was 5 times more than Vietnam. What I think most voters would say, nah, let's don't do that. That's a bad idea.
Terrible idea. Yeah.
That's why when you print money, you can finance these wars that enrich who we call the war profiteers. So they're shoving worthless paper down the villager's throat, which leads to, ultimately hyperinflation, which brings down every regime, and it happens every single time in history. So I don't think this will be any different. What would make US statistically any better than the Dutch Empire, the Portuguese, or the Spanish, or most recently the British? And it looks like US is being dethroned by the system where the BRICS have exchanged physical gold for a barrel of oil, which is a great system because it puts a peg to gold, whereas we lost our Nixon shut the gold window, and then we just lost the Saudi peg, 3 months ago?
Yeah, just recently, and you guys, that's going to come home to roost before too long.
Right.
We're
Because
losing our
that makes
petrodollar.
us naked, right? I mean, we don't have anything but really the military backing the dollar, and once you get to that point, people see through the fraud big time.
Absolutely. And you guys, so a little tidbit I pulled out of one of John's articles. These things are just full of amazing information. If we got 17.34 trillion in deposits and only 128 billion in FDIC in the FDIC fund, that's only 0.74% of the
Right.
deposits. So it's
That means
basically
you get
nothing.
$74 on 1,000.
Yeah.
It's less than 100 on 1,000. So they don't have the money. They do
Yeah.
not.
They don't got the money. It's not safe in there, guys. If there's bank runs this time around, I mean, we're going to be in deep trouble, real deep
Yep.
trouble.
So do your duty and go to the bank. No, I just say it's imminent. I don't say do it. It's inevitable. It's just so you don't want to be standing in line when that day comes. That's for sure.
Right? Absolutely. And another thing you had pointed out, this isn't something you can like opt out of or you ever had a chance to vote against. So, we're all just sitting here just waiting to get victimized by this basically. And it's just something good for people to consider.
Right.
So the silver industry is going to use a lot of silver going forward. I had come across an estimate that the solar industry would use 161 million ounces of silver this year. But I know that you had spoke with Chin Lee about the situation, and a more accurate figure might be around 206 million ounces. Would you mind sharing with the viewers why the 206 million ounces is probably more accurate and why the initial numbers put out were likely low?
Oh, geez. Yeah, Chin Lee is going to let me publish his research on that. So what I'd like to do is just give you basically some broad strokes on that because it's very interesting.
Okay, you bet.
What so in the description field will be the link for that article. And basically you're looking at, I believe, for every gigawatt of power, 500,000 ounces. I believe that's the calculation. I got so many
Okay.
conversions in my head. And what you have to start looking at, and the reason it was lowballed was because the new panels have a better or more silver load in them. There's basically three kinds, PERC, PERC, TOPCon, and HJT stands for heterojunction. But the double-sided panels are what we're seeing in these huge double desert applications, like this new field that went up in Dubai, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and we're talking about capturing the rays from the sky, and then as it bounces off the sand, they also get UV from that, as well as in polar applications, bouncing off the snow. So you can just take the numbers in some cases and double it, because there's more money spent on the infrastructure and sort of the hardware mounting these and the labor, that at that point it's real cost effective just to make sure that your solar panels are double sided. So really you're doubling the silver use in those cases. So let's wait for the most accurate numbers coming from Chen, because I definitely don't want to. He's spent his whole life doing this, and
Okay.
I just don't want to misspeak, because people get really
Touchy.
yeah, emotional
Right.
over numbers.
Hey, no sweat. Well, I really appreciate you giving us a basic rundown on that. And, that's something to consider, guys. A lot of these are coming in double-sided now, which is brilliant, for sand and snow and ice. Obviously they're very reflective. So they're really going to be maximizing the amount of power they can generate with the same square footage, so to speak.
Right. Yeah, I just tell people, think of it like anytime you've been out. I'm not a big skier, but I used to goof around in the snow quite a bit, and you get burned in like half an hour,
Oh yeah. You'll have
I
the
mean,
outline of the goggles on your face.
oh yeah, the raccoon look. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great look.
Yeah, yeah, very handsome.
Yeah.
The
So,
next thing I'd like to talk to you about um, is an idea put forward in one of your recent mining articles that miners might want to start storing silver until the environment to collect profits is better in the future. So we start seeing these prices come up. I think that this would be a great idea. The mining industry could help force silver price discovery, and I just thought that was a really cool idea.
yeah, it makes sense, right? Let's just say that one thing that we know about, this is why there's some clowns out there like David Ramsey and Harry Dent and a few others that say that, like, gold's going to $500 an ounce. And about 3 times a year, Kitco will trot out these clowns to say, I think they're paid for by Bloomberg or somebody to come out and say gold's going
Probably.
to, but it makes no sense, because the cost of production and mining puts a floor underneath the price of gold and silver. So the problem with silver right now is the cost, what they call the all-in sustaining cost of silver, is right around the spot price. So there are some miners that are saying, well, maybe we'd be better off than um, holding on to our silver, just like you're a stacker. You know how we say
Sure.
we have diamond hands, right? Or we want to think we do, or at least there's
Uh,
times where you need liquidity. All of us, none of us are, um, Elon Musk style net worth people. So there's times where you got to pay your bills. But whenever possible, it's better to spend your Federal Reserve note that is being printed than spend your real money, which you can't print. So there's a syndicate of miners that are beginning to have conversations to store their silver and wait for discovery. And they think that, what's good about that story is that if enough of them do that, then you're limiting supply on the market. Thus, we all know, therefore, if silver's already in a deficit situation and mining outputs are either prone to issues with ore grade or strikes, like we talked about earlier, that can be a factor of the environmental concerns, like we're
mhm.
seeing in Panama, or labor disputes, or a variety of other reasons. Now you're looking at the nail in the coffin. If some of these mid-tier or major producers start saying, you know, we're not letting it go at this price that's right at spot if we can't make a profit that way. But it's sort of like a game of chicken. You know, they have to sit there and go, how long can we keep our lights on? Because it's not like you can just flip a switch and all of a sudden turn on any type of factory. You've got,
Right.
you've got to buy your energy in advance. Anytime you're drilling, and when these people buy energy, they buy it on you have to do it on the futures market. So there's a lot of nuance to that, but it's sort of if I'll be putting that the link, look for the keywords, um, hold it, we'll say miners holding. I'll put that in the keywords of the article. Miners, like, they're basically being like apes.
Yeah.
They're holding for
That
higher prices.
that sounds like a good idea. And what you said is so true. Our intention is to be diamond hands. But of course things will come up where we might have to offload, portions of our stacks. And it's a blessing that we do have our stacks in those moments. But yeah, for the most part, we're just going to try and hold on to these for as long as we can until we see some real price discovery. And I just think that that's a really powerful thought, that they could start behaving more like stackers in regards to that. And you do have a good point. There's going to be some limitations to that, guys. I mean, they're going to have to store this stuff, and security risks, whatever it might be. Um, but I just think it's a really cool idea.
Well, a
I
lot of
also
it,
wanted
a
to
lot of it
mention.
has to do with how much, how much. There's a saying when you're evaluating a miner, you're usually looking at things like ore grade, their management team, their jurisdiction. But one real importance that goes to their financeability is looking at how much cash do they have on hand versus how much do they burn through in a month. So if they look good with those numbers, it's almost like thinking about, can I afford to go on a vacation or something? It's like that. Or a lot of people calculate what the risk would be to be out of work or without income for a few months. So, and it is sort of high stakes for them because you'd have to be in a really good position. But if you can convince the shareholders and the board that this could be a way then to get more leverage in the future, but a lot of people, there's always that old saying, I think the economist was Galbraith, that says, in the long run, we're all dead. So no one has a crystal ball except for Brian here, but no one else does.
Yeah, I wish I had had a crystal ball and I could call these markets. But yeah, that's a good point. If they have a high burn rate, that's going to limit how long they can engage in these activities.
Right.
I did want to mention real quick. I love the term parasite class. I feel like you coined that. I first heard it come out of your mouth, and I just think it's such a great description of the politicians.
Right.
So it's something that I might use from time to time, and I'll give you a little shout out. But I just think it perfectly describes them and their relationship to us.
Yeah, that they're definitely. Why do you think someone would spend? I think there was a race here in Pittsburgh just for the like a local seat, 40 million bucks for a job that pays you 120, 150, whatever it is, now
Hmm.
180.
Yeah.
Come
Why
on.
would you do that?
Right. It just, the math doesn't add up. But obviously these people, I've never seen it before though, where the way I describe it is there used to be what we call democracy, where the people sort of elect a representative. And the idea, if you take the word representative, it means to make present what is not present. So they're there to since we're not present, they're supposed to represent us. And then it morphed into plutocracy and aristocracies, like ruled by an elite few. But now it's what we call kleptocracy, where it's full on theft, which you would see manifested in, stock trades, that the parasitic class, they actually gather in rooms and get briefed in classified, briefings with the Joint Chief of Staff So they can read tomorrow's newspaper today and make trades. And anyone can follow like Unusual Whales on Twitter. He'll show you that it's not Republican, it's not Democrat, it's both sides of the aisle, and they're involved in this. And that's what I mean by parasites, because they exist by feeding off of us. I guess we're the host in that situation.
Yeah, unfortunately, they're like a bunch of ticks on our back, you know.
Right.
And we can't get these darn things off. And you know, like you said, we expect these people to go and represent us and do what's in our best interest, and they're lining their own pockets. You know, they're a bunch of sellouts, and yeah, I just really appreciate that you came up with that term. I think it describes them perfectly. And so I'm gonna try and help get that one going a little, you
Yeah,
know.
that is one of my favorite. I just say we're the villagers and they're the parasites. And this is not anything new. I mean, in feudalism, we had the king in the castle, and then the villagers worked the fields. I mean, it's really similar, as the middle class is getting wiped out. So it's a very well, and it's just going to get better, right? With the central bank digital currency. I can't wait to see that. That's
Oh
when,
man.
that I won't, that's for another show. Okay.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. But yeah, John, it was great to have you on. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me. Everyone, I'm going to put a link to John's socials in the description. I'm going to link those articles he was talking about in the description. I do highly recommend you check him out. I'm on his newsletter. You know, I receive them, and it's a really great way to stay up to date on what's going on in the silver industry. And a lot of the stuff that he brings up, that they're really outside of the box thoughts that I think you guys would appreciate.
Well, thank you so much, Brian. I'm a fan of your channel, and let's all remember that it's the smaller, we're a small organization. I mean, I publish on Substack. I don't write for Bloomberg or Yahoo or, thank God, any of the or Wall Street Journal. So, you're doing news as well, Brian, with this station. So really, I believe in shop small, smaller is always better than bigger, right? Think about if you were
Sure.
to, if I were to go, let's say, and I'm married right now, but let's say if I were to propose to my wife, would I go to a corporate chain like Red Lobster or to a locally owned in your neck of the woods? I remember Brothers Luck was that restaurant downtown. You ever
Yeah.
been? I would probably go there, someplace
Yeah.
like,
Instead of the corporate chain.
yeah, or and say, let's go to the Sizzler, honey. It's so romantic. I mean,
Yeah. Let's go to
so
Chili's. I got a
yeah,
surprise for you.
Applebee's. It's time for Applebee's, and will you marry me? Come on. Anyway, Brian, it's been my honor.